Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just take a step back rather than discussing about the alternative fuels. What my plan was to talk about the elephant in the room, which is about the new regulations right now, which is coming. So IMO has given us kind of signals and roadmaps to follow, and they have also changed their stance from tank to wake to well to wake, and that gives a completely new perspective when we look at life cycle emissions. So based on that, what I think is we are reaching there in terms of fuel, alternative fuel, but before that, there is another intermediate stage which will go on in parallel with this with this search for the alternative fuel, and that is emissions management. So my topic is on emissions management, and I'll be talking basically what is happening in the industry and how people are getting ready. So as Appo already said, I am from the UK P&I Club, and I am based in Singapore. I am an ex-marine engineer. I was a chief engineer. Right, with that, let me proceed. So yes, of course, there is an EU ETS buzz in the industry. And what's happening basically is people are talking about mandates, accounts, contracts, and getting ready with the MRV reporting and data sharing. So what's with the mandates? Mandates are basically what is happening now is a ship owner is ultimately responsible for this entire management of this EU ETS. But he can mandate a DOC holder or a technical manager to do this task for him. But there has to be a mandate, there has to be an agreement, a contract between these two parties. Even if maybe a bareboat charter is involved, there has to be a mandate. So all these things have been worked out. Apart from that, accounts are being opened. There's a new term called MOHA. Anybody heard about this term? MOHA, M-O-H-A. So it's basically a marine operators holding account. I see somebody nodding. So it's a marine operators holding account which companies, ship owners are opening at their assigned registries where they have been assigned. So the entire attribution list has been given out by EU, and now many of the owners are linked to an authority. So they are opening their MOHA accounts. MOHA accounts are basically online accounts like your online banking system. You have the facility to see how much of emissions you are doing and to submit the EUES. All that is possible through this online account, and you can actually also give your manager an access to this account if he is doing it for you. Apart from that, so there is contracts. The contract is basically what is happening is there are charter parties, because there is an owner and a charter party involved. So there has to be a rolling provision of transferring the EUES or equivalent costs to the owner, who will ultimately be submitting. There can be sub-charters, so on and so forth. So all these contracts are very, very important, because if they are not really done correctly at this stage, there can be a lot of disputes later on. And even the responsibilities and assignments of various responsibilities between the managers and the charterers who will be doing what has to be clearly defined in these contracts. So that's also going on. And we are seeing a lot of these contracts coming to us to kind of vet these contracts and see that they are okay, and we advise on those things also. MRV reporting is, of course, has been happening for quite some time now, but this is slightly changed. There is a monitoring plan for what is going on in terms of EU ETS, how much you will be consuming, how much you will be emitting, and there's also a monitoring plan which will be developed for the next, which is the fuel EU Maritime, which is coming from 2025. So there are some changes in MRV reporting, and data sharing between the owners and the charterers and the managers wherever they are is becoming so important, because unless the data is shared correctly, it is transparent, there will be disputes, because what is happening on the ship, the manager has to report back to the owner has to report back to the charterer, and the allowances has to flow back that way. Moving ahead, we were talking about the lower side of this screen earlier in terms of movement of these allowances between voyage charter to time charter. But right now, the green line is where the concentration is in the industry, where these mandates are being formed, the new risks for the technical managers if they are taking over these responsibilities. So basically, there can be three different approaches to this. One is where the owner is responsible. That is being done by the bigger companies because they have their interests in carbon trading. Is another business model. So they become in charge of this, entire emissions, and they are managing the show themselves. Otherwise, there's another arrangement where owner is transferring this responsibility to the manager, and the manager is doing it on the owner's behalf. But then there are risks for the manager. The manager can have credit risk if the owner doesn't pay, and all that is there. So generally managers are not ready to do that unless there is some financial company is the owner of the vessel, or a leasing company who cannot do it. And in certain cases, managers are agreeing to do this also, which we are seeing. And the other arrangement is basically, what happens is one is the owner does, one is the manager does it, and the other arrangement is, the manager just does the part, the work he does it, but actually the responsible party is still the owner. So all these things, the mandates have to be worded correctly, written correctly. So all that is going on. Right. I think I've covered what I had to say on this part. Apart from that, so this is how the BIMCO ETSA clause, which has come up quite some time now. It's in 2022. This provides the ultimate costs to the charterer, and there has to be a rolling provision, as I said, for the transfer of these costs back to the charterer, and the charterer will place the necessary allowances in a designated account. And also there is a right for the owner to actually suspend the CP performance if emissions allowances if the emission credits aren't placed in that designated account. So he can give a notice, and he can cancel the charter party. So all these are there, but of course when these agreements are coming, they are coming in various different forms. The standard clauses are different, but agreements which are getting incorporated, there are problems sometimes. So it is not a good practice to amend these standard clauses. Then the wordings can change, the meanings can change. Apart from that, there have been BIMCO clauses for Voyage charter parties. So the Voyage charter parties work in slightly different way. There can be a transfer of costs, actual cost, money, in the freight agreement in terms of freight, or it can also be in terms of your surcharge, a particular surcharge in that particular voyage. So this is decided beforehand, and based on the performance of the vessel, and an agreement is made. And after once the amount is paid, generally there is no recourse for the ship owner unless special provisions are made for laycan and demurrage events, or some other delays which might happen in this chartering process. Apart from that, there's another shipman emissions trading scheme allowance clause, which basically talks about how the owner and the manager will be managing this entire show in terms of the mandate which I was talking about. So that is all these clauses are from BIMCO, and they are available on the website. Right. To come to the next, the next regulation which is coming up, slightly difficult, but I will explain this for people who are not familiar with this. So now with fuel EU Maritime, what will happen is, fuel EU Maritime is a change. It's again, it's a well to wake process, and what will be calculated is at 2020 level, at 2020 year. The GHG intensity of the fuel which was being used was 91.16, which you can see there on the corner. And from this level, from 2025 onwards, the GHG intensity of the fuel being used has to reduce by 2%, and that will go to 6% and then 14.5%. Those figures are there on the right. So if you see here, HFO, which is I can't take this. So HFO, which is here. 91.7. So HFO, people with HFO or LFO or MDO, which are already above the 91.16%. So at 2025, they have to reduce by 2%. So they have to do something about it, right? So what can they do? Probably, biofuel, some amount of biofuel. There is also provisions for pooling, borrowing. I'll talk about that in the next slide. But you can see that LNG with auto cycle, because how the LNG is consumed on the vessel, the GHG intensity is also dependent on that. So for an auto medium speed engines, it is kind of performing up till 2025, but 2030 something has to be done. But for auto slow speed, for diesel slow speed, these engines are compliant. So depending on the type of LNG engines, what kind of engines they have, the compliance can be different. And if you go to right up to the last, that is NH3, ammonia, which is an E, and that as an e-fuel, not the ammonia which we have right now. If it is NH3 e-fuel, which is much lower, and the GHG intensity is only 3, so different fuels will have different values, and the default values are given by EU, but this can be, you can actually calculate and produce the actual values also if you want to get a gain on that. Let me proceed because the time is clicking. There is pooling, banking, borrowing arrangements which can be done. So basically, you can pool a fleet, you can bank. If you have excess, you have overcapacity, overperformance, then you can bank it for next year. And if you can also borrow, from if there is, you're falling short for a particular year from the next year onwards. So who owns this borrowed or banked energy intensity? The owner or the charterer? So if I have a show of hands, who thinks owner owns it? Anybody wants to take that? Owner. So anybody thinks charterer owns it? So he also thinks charterer. So I don't have an answer right now. So these clauses are not there, but these provisions have to be made in the charter party in terms of who owns this banked or borrowed amounts, of GHG, which can be transferred between a vessel for using in the next year. Shore power will be a requirement for containers and passenger vessels from 2030. There will be penalty models, penalty in the sense if you don't really meet this requirements, there will be penalty. There will be blacklisting of companies and so on and so forth. Wind has an advantage because wind, what they're saying is it has got a double advantage. If you can, of course, install and show that you are being able to reduce the propulsive power by using wind energy, then there is an advantage. First of all, you're paying less for EU ETS, and secondly, also for fuel, EU Maritime, you get a kind of a discount if you can show that the wind energy is assisting in the propulsion. So with that, my last slide. So the hard and the soft options which is happening in the industry. Hard is basically actual retrofits, those kind of things. Hull and propeller matching, that's happening quite a lot, I would say. Different kinds of new propellers and hub caps, and so those kind of things. Radical underrating is basically reducing the bore of the engine, each unit. That is also a big modification which is also also happening. Sails and rotor sails, some companies are installing it. It's on a trial stage. I really don't know how much it is contributing to the emissions factor. Carbon capture is another big solution which everybody is talking about, and it has to come in. But there are a lot of hurdles for carbon capture to ultimately start making effects and seeing what is going on. So carbon capture will come, but the logistics has to fall in place for that. And there are other retrofitting options like air lubrication and many others. And the softer ones which can be implemented much easier are the route optimization, just in time. Hull painting and hull cleaning is becoming very, very vital. Keeping a clean hull, clean propeller, and having the correct type of paint is very important. LED lights, a small amount. Methane abatement is another place everybody is looking at. Maintenance, power management, biofuels, and pooling, borrowing, banking, which I spoke about. I think I'm just on time. I have to end it here. Thank you.